Hey guys, how's it going? We got another episode of Inside the Ice tonight with Tim. Another episode of Inside the Ice, and this summer heat is killing me, but I got this new t-shirt from justdishinghockey.com, and the new dry fit t-shirts, flops, and shades are keeping me cool this summer. Go check it out, justdishinghockey.com. You get 5% off your first order, or $5 off your first order just by entering your email, and then 10% off by using the promo code GCSN in all caps. Check it out, justdishinghockey.com. So tonight I'm going to be just going freeballing about the NHL and all the off-season moves that have been going on this year. We have a lot to look forward to this season in the NHL. We have numerous teams where, once again, are Stanley Cup contenders. Numerous teams who are so close to winning a Stanley Cup or making it to the Stanley Cup last year with such a good team like Nashville or Winnipeg or Pittsburgh going for a three-peat or Tampa Bay. All of those teams could have easily won the Stanley Cup, and I would have said, yeah, they deserved it. But the Washington Capitals won their first Stanley Cup. Alexander Ovechkin won his first Stanley Cup. I'm going to start over in the Western Conference because, in my opinion, I think that conference is a little deeper than the Eastern Conference. But there are so many moves going on in the Western Conference this year. Let's go back to the Stanley Cup finalists, Vegas Golden Knights. James Neal moves on, signs a 5-year deal with Calgary. Fleury gets a pretty decent-sized extension for his point of his career, but I feel that extension was well-deserved by his performance this playoffs, and I think he has at least a few years and will fulfill that contract. I don't know if Vegas has it to go back to the Stanley Cup again. I do know, even what makes it even more willing to bet on, is that Vegas is in a weaker Pacific Division. The Pacific Division isn't as strong as the Central Division. So Vegas right then and there gives themselves a better chance of going back to the playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights will be back in the playoffs next year. The question is, in their second season, will they go to the Stanley Cup again? I don't know. In the other division, the Central Division, it's going to be Nashville and Winnipeg in 1 and 2. Because honestly, a lot of those two teams, they kept the bulk of their team together besides Stastny going to Vegas. But they kept the majority of the team together. And both of those teams, they met in the second round because they're in the same division. But, man, those two teams could have been the teams of the Western Conference Finals. And Winnipeg knocked out the President's Trophy winner Nashville in the second round. Not because Nashville wasn't good enough to make it past the second round. It was just those two teams were Stanley Cup contenders. In Nashville, UC Saros got a pretty decent-sized extension. I think it was 4 years. That's pretty good for a backup. He was also on the all-rookie team this year. I think, in my opinion, he's the best backup in the league. And Nashville is in a position right now where they can develop Saros to be the next Pekka Rinne. Rinne is 35 or 36. He's only got a few more years left, in my opinion. And I've noticed over the past few years, he'll have incredible seasons. Like he just won the Vezina this season. But come playoffs, his stats seem to just drop a little bit. And both times it came up in the series where they lost. In the Stanley Cup Finals, Rinne, that was not his strongest series. They lost to Pittsburgh. They lose to Winnipeg. That was not Rinne's strongest series, in my opinion. But he's an incredible goalie, and Saros has a perfect role model to look up to and say, this is what you need to be like to be a decent goalie, or not a decent, a very well goalie in the NHL. And then in the Central Division, we have like a traffic jam below 1 and 2. You have Dallas, who could take the 3 spot, St. Louis, who could take this 3 spot, Minnesota, who could take the 3 spot, and then the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't know. They still have Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, so I'm not going to count the Blackhawks out until I see it. They are coming off one of their worst seasons, especially with this team specifically. This has been the worst season. So, in my opinion, I expect to see 5 teams from the Central Division go to the playoffs, but who knows? But then when you go back to the Pacific Division, you say, okay, you have Vegas at the top. I really believe Vegas is the best team in the Pacific Division. But then, as I was looking over the sign-ins and the trades and the contract extensions, you notice San Jose. San Jose signs Kane to an extension. San Jose signs Couturier to an extension. They have kept their big names on the team, and I believe that they are a contender. I think they will be just one notch below Vegas, so I think it's going to be like Vegas and then San Jose. And then honestly, who knows with Edmonton? They have Connor McDavid, but we watched last year. How much can one player do? Not much. Calgary, I'm really looking forward to Calgary this year. They are making a lot of moves that I like this season, and they're being in the Pacific Division means that they can slide into the playoffs just in that finding that 3 spot. I believe, looking at this Calgary roster, that they're fully capable of at least getting into that 3rd spot. You have Mike Smith in net. You now have a goalie. You signed a respectable veteran, James Neal, who is looking for a Stanley Cup. You have Johnny Gaudreau. You have Kachuk. You have numerous young players who can just thrive off of these. Neal, Smith, Gaudreau's been in the league a numerous amount of years. He has a good amount of experience as a small, skilled forward. A lot of kids coming in right now can look up to Gaudreau. And then they signed Noah Hannafin. I mean, they didn't sign Noah Hannafin. They traded Dougie Hamilton for Noah Hannafin. I think Hannafin is in a very good position right now. Hannafin can, I feel in my opinion, is going to develop more in Calgary than he ever would in Carolina. That's just my thoughts. So I'm looking forward to seeing Calgary make a push for the Stanley Cup playoffs because they were not in it last year. And then you have LA bringing back Ilya Kovalchuk to the NHL. I'm interested to see how that goes. LA is just one of those teams where I just never want to count them out. They're always a solid team, but when you're looking, there's only the top 3 teams in each division make the playoffs, and then 2 wildcard spots in the rest of the conference. So you're not talking a whole lot of spots with a lot of good teams this season, especially if the Central Division takes all 5 of those playoff spots in the Western Conference. And that the Pacific Division only is allowed to send 3 teams to the playoffs because you got Vegas, you have San Jose, you have Calgary, you have Edmonton, who knows. You also have Anaheim. Anaheim did lose a decent amount of players this season, so I'm not sure how that turnover is going to go. But, again, all solid teams. The Pacific Division is a very closely contested division, in my opinion. But there is a gap between a lot of the teams in the Central Division and the Pacific Division, other than Vegas. So that's my thoughts on the Western Conference. Now it's time to move over to the Eastern Conference. And I'm going to start with the Atlantic Division just because I am really looking forward to how this division plays out. Maybe that's just my bias from being from Boston. But I'm really looking forward to seeing this absolutely loaded Tampa Bay team. Tavares went to Toronto. Who isn't interested in seeing how John Tavares does with Austin Matthews in Toronto. And then Boston, it's Boston. A lot of young talent. And then you got Zdeno Chara. The Bergeron, Pastrnak, Marchand line is still intact. Tuukka Rask is going to be solid in that. And then he's going to have nights where you're going to be like, Tuukka, what are you doing? But those three teams are going to take the top three spots in that division. There's been a lot of rumors saying, oh, Karlsson from Ottawa is going to Tampa Bay. I honestly don't know what's going to happen with Karlsson. I truly feel like it looks like Karlsson will not be in Ottawa. It has to be extremely awkward after all that's come out, him remaining in Ottawa. So I don't know. He's also the team captain. So he's also an elite offensive defenseman that if I had on my team, I would not want to trade. But a lot has unfolded. The GM is a mess in Ottawa. The team is a mess in Ottawa. That team isn't – I'm not expecting much from that team this season. I'm really excited also about this year because for years and watching hockey, there was a good amount of years where Toronto was a weak team, but like Ottawa and Montreal were always making the playoffs. I don't see Montreal and Ottawa making the playoffs this season. I don't see it. Montreal has more to look forward to, in my opinion, than Ottawa because, one, it's Montreal. Montreal is always going to be a respectable team, whether or not they're good on the ice. It's the Montreal Canadiens. But Montreal also has Pacioretty on the table. They got to decide what they're going to do with him. If they're going to keep him, trade him, who knows? And you got Gallagher. Shea Weber is out at least half the season. Carey Price is coming off one of his weakest seasons, but he's also on his biggest contract. They also did have a lot of draft picks this season, in my opinion. I think they had 4 draft picks before the second round was over. So if those draft picks and a lot of their young guys can develop very quickly, then you're looking at a bright future. But you can't guarantee that, so you just don't know. Buffalo now has a goalie. They signed Carter Hutton. They have Jack Eichel. They drafted Rasmus Dahlin. They have a defenseman now who is, if he makes it and he lives up to what everybody has been looking forward to, then he's going to be their franchise defenseman. And those two guys, Eichel and Dahlin, will be the two guys that the Buffalo Sabres build their team around. The Buffalo Sabres just need to find the guys to build around Eichel and Dahlin. So I don't know. I think the Sabres will be better this year than they were last year. How much? It's going to be an improvement, but maybe a slight improvement. That's what I'm really seeing. The Florida Panthers, I think, they so deserve that wild card spot. But I don't see them beating out one of the top 3 teams. I just don't. But the Florida Panthers are ready to make a push into the playoffs. They were like 1 or 2 points out of the postseason last year. They deserve to be in the playoffs. So I see in the East, unlike in the West, I see it going to be 4 teams going to the playoffs from the Atlantic, 4 teams going to the playoffs from the Metro. I honestly kind of have a feeling Tampa Bay, first place. Toronto and Boston are going to be tight. It's a toss-up 50-50 for 2 and 3. And then Florida is going to get the wild card. In the Metro Division, it appears the Pittsburgh Penguins are very unhappy that they were not able to complete the three-peat, especially given the fact that it was the Washington Capitals who ended it, and the Washington Capitals would go on to win the Stanley Cup. I expect Pittsburgh to be in pretty much full revenge tour going. They've brought Cohen back. They're adding depth to the defense, in my opinion, which is what they were lacking last season. So they brought back a few guys. They have more depth on defense. You have Murray, another year of experience, and that he's still a young goalie. He has 2 Stanley Cup rings, but he's still a young goalie. And then, of course, the two-headed monster, Crosby and Malkin on center. You got Kessel. You have a lot of talent. That's a explosive offense on that team. I expect a lot. Pittsburgh's definitely a contender again. They'll most likely, however, take the 2nd seed. I don't know. I'm just assuming they're going to take the 2nd seed because it seems like Washington always snags the division, and it was always Pittsburgh who would just knock them out of the playoffs. But it's going to be very close this season between, in my opinion, Washington and Pittsburgh. Washington could, however, there is a slight chance of a Stanley Cup hangover, but I feel a lot of people would love to see Washington right back at it again, hitting Pittsburgh. And that's what I'm kind of feeling. They kept a good amount of their team together. They didn't lose as many people as I thought they were going to. So that's good. And it's just all those guys who won that cup, they are now Stanley Cup champions. They know what it's like to win a Stanley Cup, and that's a lot of experience. That's a lot above a lot of other people in the NHL. And they can use that to their benefit. Like I said, 1 and 2 is going to be Pittsburgh and Washington. 3, who knows? I think the Devils are going to improve even more than they did last year. So the Devils could snag the 3rd seed. Philly, however, is looking good. This division, in my opinion, is more like the Pacific Division in the West because you got more more solid, closely contested teams where, that 3 and that 2nd wildcard seed, who knows what those it could be a combination of New Jersey, Philadelphia, Columbus. Any of those 3 teams were to take those last 2 playoff spots, I wouldn't be surprised. But the Atlantic Division, you have Tampa Bay, Boston, Toronto. Boston has a lot of young talent. Jake DeBrusk, Heinen. They signed Halak as a backup. Boston has a lot to look forward to. You got Zdeno Chara. You got Torrey Krug. Charlie McAvoy on D. Charlie McAvoy is like 21 years old, and he's an absolute stud. So, like I said, that's about it. Check out justdishinghockey.com. These T-shirts are pretty sweet. They got a lot of different designs. This is a